Hello, today I am reviewing Beyond Me by Donwerth-Chikamatsu. This is a middle grade novel in verse. As you may know, I checked out a lot of novels in verse from the library recently, wanting to read more of them. This was one of them, and now I will tell you about it. This book is about an 11-year-old girl named Maya who lives in Japan, and this book is based on a real historical event, the earthquake and tsunami that heavily affected Japan in March of 2011. So already the fact that this was based on a real historical event made it interesting to me because I've heard of that event. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I mean, I was pretty young when it happened, and I also wasn't in that area when it happened. This seems to be very much based on the author's own experience and story. The author lived and Maya lived in not exactly where Japan was most affected. I mean, I think all of Japan felt the earthquakes, but it was mainly the people in northeastern Japan that were affected the most, who saw the most devastation. So in the narrator's case, she and her family and her house are okay, but she knows that a lot of people are not, and that people are missing, that people have died, and that they're in a lot of crisis. They also experience aftershocks, and Maya is afraid of what could happen. Some people are saying that there could be a big one, that an even worse earthquake will happen, and they're not quite sure when that could happen or if it'll even happen, and they're just afraid and trying to be prepared and do what they can. This book definitely helped me learn more about that event, but I think that it didn't just give information, it also really got into the emotions of the main character, and I felt that the language was really powerful at times, and I liked that. Being a novel in verse, it felt quite poetic, and so it made sense that the emotions were really touched on in here. I mean, even in a novel that could happen too, but I think it's kind of, I would say, dramatized even more because it's in verse, but I think that that event was very big, so it would have made sense either way to talk about it in the way it's talked about. Like some novels in verse do, this one is written in a pretty normal way for the most part, but there are some times when words are written a little differently, maybe bigger, smaller, or with some kind of shaking effect to represent the earthquake or the aftershocks, and there were some things done with the design in the book and the typography to represent those events, and so I thought that was a nice touch. It's very unique. I think this book is very much about kindness and selflessness. I think Maya is very caring. She cares a lot about the people around her, and especially the people of the Northeast, and she tries to figure out what she can do to help them. There's also a lot about her helping her grandmother and great-grandfather who work out in a field and they raise vegetables. There's also stuff about origami cranes. There's also a cat in this book. I think the cover is very nice. I like the colors. There's a sunflower on here. Sunflowers are kind of a big part of the story. Looks very cute. In this book, it also shows the times of when things happened in military time, so it does that a lot, not just like when the earthquake happens in the beginning, but throughout the book, and that was a nice touch. Sadly, I did have one pretty big issue with this book, and that is part of the writing style. Now, I have read quite a few novels in verse at this point. This one was sadly one of the not so good ones when it came to how it was written. For whatever reason, the author decided to write this mostly in lowercase letters. She did use capital letters if she was using a proper noun, or when she was showing, like, for example, Maya sends messages to the people of the Northeast. Whenever it was something like that, it would be written properly, but otherwise it would not be. There were also not all forms of punctuation. I think there were question marks, things like that, but there weren't periods, and so with the way it was written, sometimes it was hard to tell when a sentence began and when it ended, and sometimes I would have to read it over again. I guess I kind of got used to the writing style over time, but I don't think it had to be that way. That unfortunately made it a little confusing and not as pleasant to read. Overall, though, it was a decent story, especially being based on a real story and helping me learn more about that. And I really like Japan, and so I'm happy to learn more about Japan. I do think if this were not based on a real story, maybe I would not have enjoyed it as much. The book was fine. Maya was a nice character, but I didn't feel super connected to any of the other characters. A lot of novels in verse can lack depth sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they just kind of feel like there's not much to them. There are some things I can say about them, but not much. In fact, and this video probably won't be an exception, so far any novel in verse or poetry novel or poetry book that I've done a review on, the review videos have never been more than 10 minutes long, and that's not intentional. That just kind of shows that I say what the book's about, I say some more about it, and that's pretty much it, and that's fine. That is the way the author chose to write the book, but I'm just describing it. But ultimately, I thought the book wasn't bad. I thought it was educational, and I think it had good examples of being kind and helping people in need and just being a caring person. Ultimately, I'd give it 3 stars. If you have read this book or anything by this author, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, Thank you for watching.